What does it mean when nearly 1,000 drones are launched in just 24 hours? And does that signal a turning point in the war rather than just another escalation? Russia has deployed 948 drones in a single day across Ukraine, one of the largest aerial assaults since the conflict began, while simultaneously reinforcing frontline positions, raising the question of whether this marks the operational start of a new offensive phase, with broader global implications. This video examines how this surge in aerial and ground activity fits into the evolving structure of the war, what it reveals about Russia's strategy, and how Ukraine's defensive capacity is being tested at a time of shifting international focus. The answer is not immediate, but the pattern suggests a coordinated transition rather than isolated escalation. The roots of this moment trace back to the full-scale invasion launched in February 2022, when Russia sought rapid territorial gains but encountered sustained resistance. Over time, the conflict shifted into a war of attrition, with Russia controlling roughly 20% of Ukrainian territory while struggling to capture major cities. Seasonal patterns have shaped operations, with offensives typically intensifying in spring as ground conditions improve. This cycle appears to be repeating, but with increased reliance on aerial systems. The current escalation reflects both adaptation and constraint. Russia's use of drones at this scale indicates a strategic emphasis on saturation attacks, designed to overwhelm air defense systems and stretch interception capacity. Launching 948 drones within a 24-hour window introduces a volume challenge, where even effective defenses risk depletion of munitions. This is particularly relevant as Ukraine continues to depend on external supplies for advanced air defense systems capable of countering ballistic and high-speed threats. Recent developments provide a clearer operational picture. The drone assault included daytime strikes, which remain relatively rare and suggest confidence in penetration capability. In Ivano-Frankivsk, 2 fatalities were reported, while 1 person was killed in the Vinnytsia region. In Lviv, a drone impact damaged part of a historic area surrounding a 17th-century church, recognized under UNESCO protection frameworks. Regional officials indicated that the strike targeted a densely populated urban center during daylight hours, increasing both visibility and psychological impact. These attacks followed overnight strikes across 11 regions, resulting in 5 additional deaths. The geographic spread indicates a broad targeting approach, rather than concentration on a single axis. Regions, including Poltava, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Kharkiv were affected, demonstrating the continued reach of Russian aerial operations across both frontline and rear areas. At the same time, ground operations are intensifying. General Alexander Syrskii, Ukraine's commander-in-chief, reported that Russian forces launched 619 attacks over a 4-day period along multiple sectors of the front line. He described simultaneous attempts to breach defensive positions, prompting Ukraine to deploy reinforcements. The Institute for the Study of War assessed that these movements align with the start of a new offensive, supported by the transfer of heavy equipment and additional troops to forward positions. Key actors are operating under shifting constraints. President Volodymyr Zelensky has renewed calls for accelerated delivery of air defense munitions, emphasizing that existing agreements must be implemented without delay. His concern reflects a growing gap between incoming threats and available interception resources. This gap is compounded by the diversion of attention and resources toward other conflicts, particularly the ongoing war involving the United States, Israel, and Iran, which has introduced additional complexity into global security dynamics. The United States remains central to Ukraine's air defense architecture, particularly for systems capable of intercepting ballistic missiles. However, discussions between Ukrainian and American officials, including recent talks held in Florida, have not yet produced a finalized security guarantees framework. Zelensky had previously indicated that such an agreement was fully prepared earlier in the year, but evolving geopolitical conditions have delayed its formalization. The power dynamic in this phase is defined by resource allocation and timing. Russia appears to be increasing operational tempo at a moment when Ukraine faces uncertainty in sustained support. By combining aerial saturation with ground pressure, the objective may be to exploit any temporary weakness in defensive capacity and achieve incremental territorial gains, even if large cities remain out of reach. Consider a scenario where this intensified campaign continues without a corresponding increase in Ukraine's air defense supply. In this case, interception rates could decline, allowing more drones and missiles to reach critical infrastructure and urban targets. The cumulative effect would not necessarily be rapid territorial change, but gradual degradation of economic and civilian resilience, potentially shifting the negotiating position over time. Now consider an alternative scenario where Ukraine secures additional air defense systems and munitions in the near term. If interception capacity stabilizes or improves, the effectiveness of large-scale drone attacks could diminish, reducing their strategic impact. In this situation, Russia's offensive might revert to incremental ground advances, without achieving a decisive breakthrough, maintaining the current pattern of limited territorial change. The geopolitical consequences extend beyond the battlefield. The scale of drone usage underscores a broader shift in warfare, where relatively low-cost systems are used to generate strategic pressure through volume rather than precision alone. This has implications for military planning globally, as states reassess how to defend against high-frequency, distributed threats. At the same time, the conflict remains interconnected with wider geopolitical developments. The diversion of attention toward other regions affects resource flows, diplomatic engagement, and strategic prioritization. Ukraine's position is influenced not only by conditions on the ground, but also by how competing crises shape the allocation of international support. What emerges from this moment is a convergence of timing, capability, and external pressure. Russia's actions suggest an attempt to synchronize aerial and ground operations to maximize pressure. Ukraine's response depends on maintaining defensive capacity while navigating a more complex international environment. The key variable to watch is sustainability. Large-scale drone attacks require production, logistics, and coordination. Similarly, effective defense depends on continuous supply and integration of systems. The balance between these factors will determine whether the current escalation leads to meaningful shifts or remains within the established pattern of attritional warfare. In the end, this phase of the conflict highlights the evolving nature of modern war, where volume, speed, and endurance play as significant a role as traditional measures of power. The coming weeks will indicate whether this surge represents a temporary intensification or the beginning of a more sustained operational shift, with consequences that extend beyond Ukraine's borders.